The culture has changed, and now they went out, much like the Eagles did, not as high profile, but they got receivers and put them all over the place around this guy. We are all scratching our head. They paid money for Christian Kirk and Zay Jones.
Yeah, by the way, the Eagles wanted Christian Kirk.
It is a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you. Thanks for everybody who streamed on in. And yeah, I'm getting beat up a little bit on the stream, but I knew it was coming because I didn't care. I was coming to the defense of my partner, John McMullen. I'll come to the defense of Mike Gill whenever he hops aboard with us, unless he goes all West Virginia nuts on us. Then I'm going to.
He's got it. Look at him. We got outdoor Mike Gill with the WVU. Those guys go hard. Kincaid, Mike Gill, all the WVU guys.
There's a bunch of us around here, man. Shelton Gibson, Rasul Douglas, Wendell Smallwood, Kyzir White. Come on, man.
Is Wendell Smallwood still in the league?
I don't think so.
But he made it. You know, Wendell stuck around.
He was there for a hot minute. Got to give Wendell credit. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's West Virginia got this week?
It's a good question.
Come on. That's a bad
job. You got to know the answer to that.
That's a bad.
You got the swag on. You don't even know who you're playing.
They played Townsend last week, so and then losing to Kansas, you lose before the season.
Hey, everybody's losing to Kansas. Kansas undefeated.
I know.
All of a sudden.
They play Texas this week. They're in Texas.
All right. That's
sorry.
I don't know what
once
Texas
again overrated
anymore.
as they always are.
They're always overrated.
Go get a win there, Mr. West Virginia.
Actually, the voice of the Mountaineers, Tony Caridi, messaged me last night. So it was nice to hear from him. He just got put into the Syracuse Radio Hall of Fame. So those Syracuse guys, but Tony Caridi's the voice of the Mountaineers. He DM'd me last night. I do a podcast where I interview different announcers around the country. And we had Andrew Catalan on last week, and he got put into the Syracuse Hall of Fame. And Tony was telling me that he listened to the interview.
Yeah, very Syracuse, nice. Syracuse, Northwestern,
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah. There's what is Syracuse? Newhouse School of Journalism. That's a big one. That's a big one. But nobody cares about that. So we're going to move to the Eagles, Mike Gill, do a Tom Bigby. So let's start with Kyzir White. Let's start with a West Virginia guy. I got to tell you, besides people hating me because I say this is unsustainable as a whole, the most sort of angst I've gotten, and this is kind of amazing to me, honestly, is about Nakobe Dean. Why isn't Nakobe Dean on the field? Why isn't Nakobe Dean on the field? Well, why do you need Nakobe Dean on the field? He's a rookie behind two really good linebackers, and people are already starting to complain. I mean, it's a luxury. It's great having him, and now he gets to sit and learn. And they could probably only afford one after the season, and then bang, 2023, Nakobe Dean is your starting linebacker. What's wrong with that?
Is he in 2023? I mean, who's leaving?
Well, I think my guess would be Kyzir.
Okay.
They're going to pay TJ. And by the way, I think Nakobe Dean is better suited to play weak side linebacker than middle linebacker, just because of the size deficiency. So I think he's a better fit on the weak side than in the middle. And TJ's better than Kyzir. I mean, TJ's good.
Guys, you can make a strong argument of why this defense is, but we haven't complained about the linebackers once all season. Maybe the first game you had some missed tackles, but that was a collaborative effort.
That was everybody.
Right. I think, and I brought this up yesterday, John and Jody, which is one of the differences in this defense so far is that the ability for these linebackers to be able to do their job. They can cover. Yeah. You know, TJ Edwards' transformation as a guy that can play three downs has really negated the need for Nakobe Dean at this point. I mean, in years past, he might have got some playing time because Edwards would have to come off the field, but him kind of transforming into a three-down linebacker has really, I think, changed. I think it's been not talked about enough is that he has really been a key figure on a defense that has, Slay, and they got all the sacks. I think TJ Edwards has been maybe the glue that has really allowed those guys to do everything because he does his job. White's doing a great job. So you're right. There's really no need for Nakobe Dean to even get on the field at this point. That doesn't make him a guy that can't play. Sometimes you can just have an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
And I think
same thing with Cam Jurgens, by the way. Nobody complains about Cam Jurgens because they get it. I mean, obviously Jason Kelsey isn't coming off the field. Nobody complains. It's the same thing.
Well, and since week 1, we haven't heard, well, why isn't Jordan Davis playing more? He's playing the same amount of plays as he did in week 1. It's just that they're now getting the job done. His role is what it is in year number 1. So the complaints aren't there. We all like the new shiny toys. We were told Nakobe Dean was this, why did he fall to the 3rd round? So therefore, I want to see this guy in action. And hey, sometimes we can't have nice toys in Philadelphia. When things are going good, you can only find things to complain about. We don't like it. The phone doesn't ring as much when the things are going well.
I think Davis's numbers have gone up slightly. Not a lot. Well, not a major jump, but they've ticked up slightly and hope they continue to tick up with his reps on the defensive line. Speaking of the defensive line, only 8 sacks out of the defensive line last week. Mr. Edwards got the only non-defensive line sack last week. Washington just that bad. They were just waiting to break out. What is the main reason why the Eagles went from okay at best quarterback pressure to the best defensive line play in the entire NFL in week number 3?
Well, I mean, you get those weeks. Even last year, there were weeks where the defensive line had their day, and maybe
they didn't have any 9-sack weeks last year.
No. It's funny because John was on my show yesterday and said something about sacks and hurries, and a guy texted in calling him a moron, basically saying they're not the same.
I'm getting it from all angles, Jed.
Yeah, I saw that
from all angles.
I kind of agree with your call yesterday. John overemphasizes hurries. Hurries aren't sacks. The call is right. There's a difference. Hurries can be effective. They're not sacks.
Right.
Tell Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz that this week.
Yeah. His point was
Daniel Jones was hanging in the game till the last minute. Carson Wentz was not.
No, that's because of Cooper Rush. But
his point really was a sack. The clock stops. There's a loss of yardage, so it changes the down and distance, as opposed to a hurry where you get the ball back at the original line of scrimmage and the clock is generally stopped because it's an incomplete pass. That being said, the fact of the matter is you saw what Dallas did on New York. They didn't get as many sacks as the Eagles did, but they were equally effective. And I think the Eagles, look, they got to have. That's the thing, and we talked about this. Is if they're not getting the hurries and the pressure and the sacks, whatever excites you more, is John Gannon. That's the next evolution for John Gannon. Is he going to recognize that in game and say, we're not getting the same pressure we got against Washington? I need to do something more to generate it. So, yeah, they got plenty of it, and we should be happy and excited about it. But if they're not getting it this week, he's got to find a spot and a way to get it. If his game plan is, let's get pressure with 4, and it's not coming, well, then you need to send 5, and you need to disguise it, and you need to figure that out. That's the next evolution for John Gannon to win people over.
Yeah, and I think, I'm going to defend myself here. It's not that I don't like sacks. I think people don't. Sacks are always good. Sacks are never bad. It's never bad play. I just mean, look at the difference between Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz. Same pressure. Carson holds on to the ball. Kirk doesn't. Kirk throws it up for grabs. Darius Slay, red zone interception, red zone. Avonte Maddox, interception. Good things can happen from pressure. Sacks are never bad, but good things can happen from pressure. I think people don't.
That's how I tried to explain it. Is yes, the result of the sack is better, but the hurry also initiates the ability for turnovers, interceptions, getting strip sacked, having the quarterback make decisions he doesn't want to make because he
could be as simple as an incompletion on third down. Could be, a hurrying up of the quarterback.
Mike, a strip sack is a sack. It's not a hurry.
Yeah, strip sack is a sack.
Yes. Well, I'm talking about where the quarterback maybe fumbles, or maybe where he pumps because he's trying, and then the ball comes squirting out. stuff like that. But you're right.
And that's why
you're being literal on me, man. You're being literal.
I'm being 100% literal because I disagree with John. Hurries are good. Sacks are great. If you have to put them in a preferential order, sacks first, hurry second. And I don't think there's any debate.
Yeah, but you don't have to.
There are some people that say hurries mean nothing. That's unfair. That's inaccurate. Sometimes you could have a hurry. If you're just looking at the statistical markings, you can have a hurry and a guy can throw a touchdown pass.
True.
I don't know anyone who's ever thrown a touchdown pass when sacked. It has never happened in the history of the National Football League.
It's all about
I don't know how you can equate hurries to sacks. Sacks will always be better than hurries or pressures.
Real quick, another week, another player of the week for the Eagles. Brandon Graham, NFC Defensive Player of the Week for the Eagles. By the way,
and he's a hurry monster.
Yeah. By the way, that's unsustainable. So get at it, baby. They're not going to have a player of the week every week, but they have. It's unsustainable. So we'll get angst. Let's move on to Doug Pederson, Mike, and his return to Lincoln Financial Field. This is a good team, man. It's a small sample size, but they lead the NFL in turnover differential. That's something the Eagles stress. The Eagles are very good as well. I think they're third in the league. Jacksonville's number one. They have tremendous talent. It starts with back-to-back consecutive number one overall picks, and they both look like number one overall picks now that they have a adult in the room coaching instead of somebody, trying to do what he's trying to do at certain bars around the country after a loss. However, you always have that it's Jacksonville tint, and it has been a bad organization. Sorry, Tony Khan, who was in town tonight, Leah Core Center, AEW Wrestling for your wrestling fans. So he's in town early. You believe the Jaguars? You believe in this turnaround? Is this a good football team?
I do, and I said at the beginning of the year, I think they could be one of the teams, I think it's 17 out of 19 years a team goes from last to first, and they were one of the teams to keep an eye on. Not because they're great, because that division is down rotten. And they've got a lot of talent on that team. They just kept stockpiling that you didn't hear about because they weren't winning. Then you had the whole distraction with the coach. But I think we're seeing this around the league, that the change in culture, it doesn't always lead to wins. And I don't know that Jacksonville is going to be 13-4 or 12-5. They might win that division at, 10-7, but that's a huge turnaround for them. And a part of it because, you talk about the defense. They've been piling, Walker and Lloyd is on that team, Griffin. They've got a lot of Josh Allen. I mean, they've got some players on that team that you don't hear a lot about. Now, you talk about unsustainable. I don't think getting +5 turnover differential is sustainable all season long. That was like Dallas a couple of years ago. It felt like they got 2 turnovers every single game until you just don't anymore. And if you can't get them, can you win? Well, they got a guy on the other side of the ball throwing it around right now, and Trevor Lawrence, that last year we were wondering, people were losing on purpose to try to get this guy. Well, you're seeing now that he has some structure. They have a real NFL offense. The culture has changed, and now they went out much like the Eagles did. Not as high profile, but they got receivers that put them all over the place around this guy. We are all scratching our head. They paid money for Christian Kirk and Zay Jones.
Yeah, by the way, the Eagles wanted Christian Kirk, and but they didn't want to pay that for Christian Kirk.
Exactly.
And they said, "Yeah, thanks," but they really liked the player. So it's not like he's not a good player because he got overpaid. And sometimes when you're Jacksonville, you got to pay a tax for being Jacksonville until you get good, get good. And then people will start and want to come play for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. They feel like a team though, that has definitely changed their culture. How many wins is that going to lead to? Don't know. But in that division, probably more than their roster says.
Mike, I asked this of one of our guests yesterday. I forget which one. I apologize for not remembering. And John as well. Doug Pederson knows a bunch of the Philadelphia Eagles. He certainly knows the town. He knows Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman, but I don't think they're going to have any impact on the outcome of the game. But the guys that are on the field surely can. And some of the players on the Eagles certainly know Doug. having played for him, guys that have go back to the 2017 Super Bowl season. Where is the advantage more felt? Doug's knowledge of the Eagles or the Eagles' knowledge of Doug? Is there an advantage to be had this week because of that?
I would imagine the coach knows his players better than the players know his coach sometimes. I mean, at least they think they do anyway, right? Like, we've coached these guys. We know what they're good at. We know what their pluses are, their minuses, their strengths, their weaknesses, as opposed to, I don't know how much Doug even worked with the defensive players, right? I mean, how much hand did he have?
Yeah, that was all Jim Schwartz. Yeah,
right.
But, guys love him. Brandon loves Doug Pederson.
But I would think
player of the week.
And the Eagles coaching staff, none of these guys other than Stoutland. Now, Stoutland might be interesting. He might be a guy who has a lot of input this week who said, hey, I sat in the room with Doug and we designed plays and I know what he likes to do on third down in that situation. So I think Stoutland could be a key kind of guy in this situation there on that side. But I would imagine Doug. Now, how many guys really, though? The skill players, none of them were here. Goddard. So, I don't know how much input Doug will have in terms of the Eagles' offense because that personnel is a lot different and it's a completely different coach's calling. But he might know on the defensive side of the ball, hey, I know Fletch really likes to get over-aggressive in this spot. Let's do that. Brandon, same thing. A lot of players on the defensive front are still here, but most of the guys in the secondary are gone. The linebackers are obviously different. But it should be a fun chess match to see it all kind of unfold.
Yeah, here's my concern from the coaching perspective, and maybe you bring up Stout is the most important coach for the Eagles. Well, he might be every week, but this week particularly because of his intimate knowledge of Doug and the offensive game planning. Similar for Jacksonville, though. Nobody knows Nick Sirianni better, with the possible exception of Shane Steichen, than Mike McCoy and Jim Bob Cooter, and they're both on Doug's staff. Mike's the quarterback's coach. Jim Bob is the passing game coordinator. I mean, they know Nick backwards and forwards. Mike McCoy was here all the time in training camp last year before he got the job in Jacksonville. Jim Bob was on the Eagles staff, although they didn't admit it, as a consultant, especially. And Nick leaned on him, especially after the poor start. I don't think people are paying attention to that as much. This might be a game where you have to break your tendencies because McCoy and Jim Bob know what Nick wants to do.
Yeah, well, how much, though, does Nick call the plays anymore? How much does he impact that part of the game? I mean, Shane Steichen's getting a lot of this praise in terms of, he might be a head coaching candidate. Well, on game day, how much is Nick impacting the play call?
Well, no, on game day, and Nick is very vocal about this. It's his offense, and he wants a stamp on everything. I think people don't realize, the prep during the week, everything is put on the call sheet. Everything is known. We're going to do this in this situation. We're going to do this in this situation, backwards and forwards. There's a little bit of a change, and Nick always says, because people are different. So if you and I work for 40 hours and, we got everything, we're on the same page, but you're doing it or I'm doing it, it's going to be a little bit different, but not much. So that's that. Nick's very involved with this offense, very involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, every week I think in the NFL, guys sign guys off practice squads to try to pick their brain on, hey, you played on their practice all week long. What do you know? We see this all over the league. This one seems to be a little bit closer because Doug was here for so long. I wonder, guys, and by the way, I'm in the chat in the background on another device because my laptop's going to die here in a minute. So if Tone wants to put me in, if you see me back there, I'm on my other device. But the energy in that building is going to be very awkward, I feel like, in the beginning. Like, we're going to cheer, but we're 3-0. We love this team. We're excited, but this guy is here. I feel like it's going to be a very odd dynamic when he comes out, or how they introduce him and what they do for him. Don't you?
I think that ends at kickoff. I mean,
Yeah.
when the ball is kicked off, it's about the laundry. as Jerry Seinfeld says. You got to be wearing the right laundry, and they don't like you. They'll love Doug before, but as soon as that ball is kicked off, they don't like Doug. That's how I think it's going to be.
Yeah, I think it'll even be before that. I think Doug gets a major hand when he comes out right before kickoff. And then there's the good couple of minutes where they have to go out and flip the coin and the Eagles have to defer. It'll be an Eagle crowd by then. It'll be a couple of minutes of applause for Doug, and then it's over and done with.
Did they put a video up? Does he get a tribute?
No,
Is there nothing?
That's
no video, huh?
No, that's for
no JJ Redick video, like the wave.
That's for after
TJ McConnell
down the road when he goes in the Eagles Ring of Honor. Maybe that's for that's.
Well, but I guess, John, when's the next time Jacksonville would be here? 8 years, 10 years, 14 years?
Probably 8 years. But I mean, in the case of Doug, if he retires at some point, they'll probably have an anniversary, of the Super Bowl team down the road. Those are what those moments are for. He's coming back as a visiting coach. We already saw it with Andy Reid. Yeah, nice cheering, and then you get down to the game.
Did they or didn't they have a video tribute for Andy?
I
think they did. I think Gill's onto something. I think that the Eagles could put up. They got enough video to play with. Something that certainly signifies the Super Bowl win, because that's an Eagle achievement, along with a Doug Pederson achievement. He's got to be center stage of it, but you can certainly add to it. So it's not something like the crowd's looking up. Why are we looking at this? Oh, we're looking at it because we won the Super Bowl. That's right. Doug was in charge.
Well, here's a question.
I think they may go video tribute. A short one, not more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, like a quick, welcome back, Doug, and him with the hands up and the confetti falling down, and maybe him and Nick, shaking the head. I imagine, and that's why I'm like, the energy in that building is going to be really weird, because people are going to be like I don't know. It's like when the Sixers bring back Allen Iverson, it's like he's up there so many times, and when you see him, no matter how many times you saw him, you remember what he did for, not that they won a championship, but people just embrace him.
When he came back with the Nuggets, or
there were huge.
There was a huge ovation.
I was in the building that night,
but in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, if the game was on the line, and it probably wasn't at that point, but they would be rooting for their team. I don't think it's that strange, other than Jalen Reagor comes back, everybody boos him every time he touches the football, every time he comes on the screen. They don't like him. Carson Wentz, when he comes back, if he's still a starter by that point, they don't like him. They're going to boo him. Doug, they like, so they're going to cheer him until the game starts. I think it's as simple as that.
Now, I did forget to add that Doug did, have Jalen here, and he might have opinions on what Jalen can and cannot do, right? He might have some opinions of, hey, I know this kid.
Player, though.
Correct, but he might go off of what he remembers and say, hey, when I had this kid, he struggled doing X, Y, and Z, and now this could be a good game to find out how much Hurts has developed.
Yeah, and I think developed quite a bit.
You're right, John, when you say that Jalen Hurts has changed a lot since when Doug Pederson was coaching him. But I think you got to give Doug some props for it, because there was a whole bunch of Eagle Nation, that, including, I would bet, the owner, Howie, I'm not sure. Wow, that's a good question. I'll ask you guys in a second. But not everybody wanted Jalen Hurts to get on the field. They were, what do you mean you're benching our $100 million quarterback? We know he's not playing well right now, but he's the man. You can't bench him, Doug. I thought he was 1 week too late, but he did it. And that flew in the face of some people in the Eagles, certainly Eagle Nation, and within the organization, I would bet, that didn't necessarily want that to happen. So I think Doug is at least a contributor to the fact that Jalen Hurts is now one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think you got to give Doug some credit, because he put him in there for the first time.
That 2020 season, man, you could have made an argument that you could have put him in at any point. That's how bad Wentz was. I do agree that people wanted to see him work out of it, but I think there was another side. It was like, dude, he is so bad right now that you can make an argument that you have to sit him. Now, logically, you couldn't at an earlier stage of the season, maybe a week early, but because of the money. And that's what comes down to these decisions. He was getting paid so much that you couldn't put your head around. We just paid this guy, and now we're going to bench him for a guy that people scratch their heads at why you even took.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, John references this all the time. Our buddy Andrew Brandt, who's great, and hopefully we can get him on in a couple of weeks. The Eagles will not release Doug. No one has ever taken the dead cap hit that the Eagles would have to take to trade Carson Wentz. Guess what? They traded Carson Wentz, and they took the dead cap hit. So Andrew was woefully wrong about that. Your point is right on, Mike. A whole bunch of people said, but we have to go back to Carson because the money dictates we have to go back to Carson. No, they didn't.
And just to kind of roll off that point, just to see where this Eagles team is and then where they're going, the dead cap hit should have put them in disarray. Not only are they not in disarray, they are looking through the cap hit into a clear blue sky into this. I mean, we don't want to jump into the offseason yet, but just it's amazing that whole Wentz thing, where it kind of felt like they were heading because of it and where they are now. Like, you can give a full expository on that whole – it's almost like the Sixers process. All the stuff that happened in there, there's so many stories. The Eagles looked like they were going to have the death nail of this franchise and be in disarray for years, and now look where they are and how they are set up. It is truly a pretty unbelievable story and picture that they have painted moving forward.
And, you know, to defend Andrew a little bit, because I was on board with him, and Andrew's a money guy, so – anytime somebody sets a new precedent, it's a surprise to a money guy. But, I mean, Carson, I think people forget this. The Eagles wanted to try it again with Carson Wentz.
Oh, yeah.
They can lie to you all they want now. They wanted to try again originally with Carson Wentz. And Carson he had pulled the plug. He wasn't talking to anybody. He didn't want any part of this organization. He felt wronged. All that, he forced himself out. So ultimately, and this is where I put myself and Andrew, we're in the category, well, Jeffrey's still not going to do it because we didn't think he would take that hit. Now, to his credit, he took the hit, and to Howie's credit, they got an amazing return for Carson Wentz as well, considering where he was, the money he cost, and all that kind of stuff. But make no mistake, the Eagles wanted Carson Wentz back. And if they tell you differently, they're lying. I'll tell you that right now. They wanted him back.
I would agree. I would agree that they were hopeful that it could have worked out, mainly because, number one, they paid him. Number two, I don't think they were really sure that Jalen Hurts could evolve into the player that we're seeing right now. And I'm not sure
they were looking at Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson this offseason. That's revisiting his history as well. So
I just want the record to show, and I want people to go through my timeline at Mike Gill Show. I was all about giving Hurts a full season here and seeing him, and I got hammered. This summer sucked because of people coming after me for that.
Well, trust me, you're not getting an apology, Mike.
Did I think it was going to be what I'm watching now? No. But I think what is undersold about what is so special about Hurts, and I'm not saying special in a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers talent way, is that this guy sees something and works at it tirelessly to make it better. And it sometimes for some guys, it works instantaneously, and that's the society that we live in. And other guys, it takes 2-3 years. I'm 45 years old. I'm not some like old head where I'm like back in my time, but it took quarterbacks 2-3 years to make that jump. And maybe Hurts is just an old soul that it's taken him 3 years to kind of make the jump. And I hate the Josh Allen comparisons, but Allen was an inconsistent thrower, bad decision maker, and then voila, I got Stephon Diggs, and now I'm an MVP candidate. And I think Hurts is going through a similar process of the game's slowing down. He's incorporating it better. I worked my ass off, and you also gave me weapons. What a help.
Yeah, A.J. Brown's a big part of this as well. And, you know, Nick Sirianni, to go back, you know, during his interview, a large part of his interview was, how can you fix Carson Wentz? The Eagles were trying to go in that direction, but they couldn't go in that direction. And sometimes, very similar to Doug Pederson over Adam Gase and Ben McAdoo, very similar to Nick Sirianni over Josh McDaniels. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And then people say, oh, look at what they did with Jalen Hurts. They didn't know what they had with Jalen Hurts. Let's be honest.
So if we're talking about Hurts and his development, John DeFilippo was the guy who got a lot of credit for where Wentz was. Who would we say is the guy that needs to be on Hurts's hip pocket there moving forward?
Oh, I think you just said it, Mike Gill. Jalen Hurts. Because at least from what's being reported, he is such an extra effort guy. That he puts in time, he puts in work, he goes above and beyond other quarterbacks in the league, other guys on his team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not trying to short sell the quarterback coach or Steichen or anyone on the Eagles coaching staff, but I think Jalen gets more credit than anybody else for the improvement of Jalen Hurts.
And I like that answer. I guess the question moving down the road is, let's say Shane Steichen gets head coaching job and he's gone. Or are we going to wonder?
Oh my God! Do you mean that mean he can't exist? That was the most overblown story this year. 2 straight years in a row in the same offense. That's the reason that Jalen Hurts is going to become a player. No, it's not. It's because of what Mike Gill just said. Jalen Hurts put in the effort. Yeah. Jalen Hurts made himself a better player. Howie Roseman made him a better player by giving him A.J. Brown. All those things come before. 2 years in a row in the same system.
I bring this up all the time. I'm going to bring it up again. At Mike Gill's show, listen to Mike every day, 2 to 6 on the Sports Bash, 97.3 South Jersey. People forget 2016, 2017, before the 2017 season, Carson Wentz went out to work with Tom House and company in Southern California. The guys, when it comes to mechanics, after that season, now he got hurt, but never went back. Jalen Hurts did the same thing this year. His mechanics are improved, his footwork, all that kind of stuff. The difference is, I guarantee Jalen Hurts is going back. I guarantee it. To sustain and do that maintenance. That's the difference.
Yeah. Hurts is one of those guys. And I said this about Wentz, so I will throw that into the mix. Because Wentz in 16 and 17, you felt like you finally had a quarterback that just competed and just did everything possible. Because in the beginning, Wentz just looked like, I will do everything possible. And what made Wentz special, and this is what the unfortunate part is for him, the revisionist, the I told yous, he's not the same player. The guy you're watching now is not the player that he was in 16 and 17. What made him special was his escapability. He could do things with his legs. He avoided the rush. When people came, he spun out. He reverse spun. He's not a pocket passer. So you're judging a guy now who's just not the player he was. But when you had Wentz then, it was like, I just can't see the Eagles having a 4-12 season, 5-11, because this guy just competes his ass off. That's kind of how I feel about Hurts. Whether you think he's got the talent or that he's got the skill set, I feel that he competes so much and the guys love him so much. Does he have the uber talent? No, but he's not a bottom 5 talent guy. And I feel because of that intangible, this team with him will always be, put it this way, they will not have lost seasons with this guy as long as he's here.
All right, Mike Gill, I need you on the record. Even though my partner and buddy Johnny McMullen gave the Eagles a pass for the 2 3-and-outs that they had in the fourth.
I thought I hated the Eagles, Jody. I thought I hated them. Well, I'm giving them a pass.
You gave them a pass for the Detroit game and the fact that they did one thing in the Detroit game. They got the first down that they needed to eventually win the game. They had 2 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter before they did that, but they have not done anything in the fourth quarter so far. And John has given them the human nature pass the last couple of weeks. They were ahead. They didn't care. They didn't. So what? They didn't do anything. They haven't scored a point yet in the fourth quarter. Is it going to be necessary?
Or the third, by the way. Or the third.
Well, the third, they got a couple of points against Detroit. The last 2 weeks, they haven't got any points in the third quarter. But they did score in the third quarter of the Lions game. 0 for fourth quarter, all year points. Will they need to score fourth quarter points this week against a plucky Jacksonville Jaguar squad?
Will they need to? Sure, yeah. Am I worried that they have it? No. I equated it to a team puts up an 8 spot in the 6th inning and then they don't score the rest of the game. You still had a crooked number and it put the game away. I feel like the play calling changes. You don't want to show Jacksonville or Arizona or Green Bay or anybody else anything. So you scale the playbook back. I've heard John, he mentioned this on my show, and I do agree. I talked about it Monday, which is I don't think they felt that Washington was going to get back in that game. And if Washington did, I'll expand my play calling a little bit. So if needed, I think they have it in them. And yes, Jody, I think they will need to score in the fourth quarter this week because I think it will be a plucky type of game.
That's right. It's not sustainable. They will have to score in the fourth quarter.
That's sustainable being a good thing. Actually scoring in the fourth quarter. That's what we want to hear, Johnny Mac. Thank you very much for that.
What it comes down to for me in most of these games, though, guys, and it's not fun to talk about, their offensive line. Now, they didn't run the ball particularly well in the second half of that game when they could have ran the game out, but their offensive line just dominates these games. I mean, that's the difference between them and these other teams right now is their line. These other teams' lines have holes everywhere, and for 4 quarters, the holes are going to leak somewhere. The Eagles, it's a rarity to see a leak in that line, and that is just so undersold how good that line is.
Yeah.
The only team of the 3 games that put true pressure on Hurts was Detroit, and they had to bring 5 or 6 to do so.
Yeah.
They blitzed.
And Jeff Stout in Tennessee needs an offensive lineman. They pluck one off the Eagles practice squad. Detroit needs they pluck one off the Eagles practice squad. It's amazing.
People know where to come for a fill the void offensive lineman. Mike Gill, a pleasure always, bud. Good luck to your Mountaineers this weekend. If you lose to Texas, we'll make fun of you next week.
All right, boys.
Thanks, Mike.